day, everyone. Today, we'll be diving into Chapter 1 of the Philippine Distribution Code. My name is Marien Quinatadcan, and I'm here with my group mates Gwen Quinio and Casio, who will later be shown in the video. The Philippine Distribution Code is essentially the rule book for how electricity gets from power plants to your home. It's vital for ensuring a safe and reliable power system for the entire country. In this report, we'll be focusing on Chapter 1, which covers the general conditions and the definitions that underpin the entire code. So, let's begin with the first section. Chapter 1, Philippine Distribution Code General Conditions. 1.1 Purpose. A. To establish regulatory framework for the promulgation and enforcement of the Philippine Distribution Code. B. To specify the general rules pertaining to data and notices that apply to all chapters of the Philippine Distribution Code. C. To specify the rules for interpreting the provisions of the Philippine Distribution Code. And D. To define the common and significant terms and abbreviations used in the Philippine Distribution Code. 1.2 Authority and Applicability. 1.2.1 Authority. The Act provides the Energy Regulatory Commission's ERC or the authority to promulgate the Philippine Distribution Code. 1.2.2 Applicability. The Philippine Distribution Code applies to all users of the distribution system unless provided otherwise in a particular chapter or article, including A. Distribution utilities, B. Other distribution utilities connected to distribution systems, C. System operator, D. Embedded generation companies, and E. Metering service providers, F. Suppliers, G. Entities duly authorized to operate a distribution system within the economic zones, and H. Other duly authorized entities engaged in the distribution of electricity, and I. And users. 1.3 Enforcement and suspension of provisions. 1.3.1 Enforcement. 1.3.1.1 The Act assigns to the ERC the responsibility of enforcing the Philippine Distribution Code. 1.3.1.2 The ERC established the Distribution Management Committee or DMC to monitor the Philippine Distribution Code compliance at the planning and operations level and to submit regular and special reports pertaining to distribution planning and operations. 1.3.1.3 The DMC shall initiate an enforcement process for any perceived violations of the Philippine Distribution Code provisions and recommend to the ERC the appropriate fines and penalties for such violations. 1.3.2 Suspension of provisions. Any provisions of the Philippine Distribution Code may be suspended in whole or in part when the grid is not operating in the normal state and the system operator has issued an alert warning to the distribution utility or pursuant to any direct given by the ERC or the appropriate government agency. 1.4 Derogations. 1.4.1 Applicability. 1.4.1.1 If a user finds that it is or will be unable to comply with any provisions of the Philippine Distribution Code, then it shall, without delay, report such non-compliance to the ERC through the DMC and shall make such reasonable efforts as are required to correct such non-compliance as soon as reasonably practicable. 1.4.1.2 When a user believes either that it will be unreasonable to require it to correct non-compliance, the user shall promptly submit to the ERC through the DMC a request for derogation from such provision. 1.4.2 Request for derogation. 1.4.2.1 A request by a user for derogation from any provisions of the Philippine Distribution Code shall contain a. Sections and provisions of the Philippine Distribution Code against which the non-compliance or predicted non-compliance was identified. B. The reason or rationale for the non-compliance or expected non-compliance. C. Proposed corrective actions, if any. And D. The date of completion by which compliance could be achieved, if corrective actions of the non-compliance is possible. 1.4.2.2 On receipt of any request for derogation, the DMC shall promptly review such request, provided that it considers that the grounds for the derogation are reasonable or sufficiently justified. The ERC, based on DMC's recommendation, shall decide on such derogation. 1.4.2.3 To the extent of any derogation granted in accordance with 1.4.2.2, the user, as the case may be, shall be relieved from any obligation to comply with the applicable provision of the Philippine Distribution Code and shall not be liable for failure to so comply, but shall comply with any alternative provisions identified in the derogation. 1.4.2.4 The DMC shall a. Keep a register of all requests for derogations, including those denied and those which have been granted, and in the later cases, identifying the name of the person and user in respect of whom the derogation has been granted, the relevant provision of the Philippine Distribution Code and period of the derogation, and B. On request from any user, provide a copy of such register of derogations to such requesting party. 1.4.2.5 The ERC may on its own initiative or at the request of the DMC or a user, a. Review any existing derogations, and b. Review any derogation under consideration, and establish whether the ERC considers such request as justified. 1.5 Data, Notices, and Confidentiality. 1.5.1 Data and Notices. 1.5.1.1 The submission of any data under the Philippine Distribution Code shall be done through electronic format or such format prescribed or required by the DMC and agreed upon by the concerned parties. 1.5.1.2 Written notices under the Philippine Distribution Code shall be served by hand delivery, registered first-class mail, or fast-mail transfer. 1.5.2 Confidentiality. 1.5.2.1 Data submitted by any user to the distribution utility in compliance with the data requirements of the Philippine Distribution Code shall be treated by the distribution utility as confidential. These include data requirements for connection to the distribution system and those that are required in the planning, operation, and maintenance of the distribution system. 1.5.2.2 Aggregate data shall be made available by the distribution utility when requested by a user. This data shall be used only for the purpose specified in the request and shall be treated by the user as confidential. 1.6 Construction of References. 1.6.1 References. Unless the context otherwise requires any references to a particular chapter, article, section, subsection, or appendix of the Philippine Distribution Code shall be applicable only to that chapter. article, section, subsection, or appendix to which the reference is made. 1.6.2 Cross-reference. A cross-reference to another document shall not in any way impose any condition or modify the material contained in the document where such cross-reference is made. 1.6.3 Definitions. Terms which are capitalized shall be interpreted in accordance with the definitions under Article 1.7. When a word or phrase that is defined in Article 1.7 is more particularly defined in another article, section, or subsection, the particular definition in that article, section, or subsection shall prevail if there is any inconsistency. Forward. Table of Contents and Titles. The foreword was added to present the historical background of the Philippine Distribution Code 2017 edition and highlight the significant changes introduced therein. The table of contents and the titles were added as a guide for the convenience of the user of the Philippine Distribution Code. The foreword, the table of contents, and the titles of the chapters, articles, and sections shall be ignored in interpreting the Philippine Distribution Code provisions. 1.6.5 Mandatory Provisions. The word shall refers to a rule, procedure, requirement, or any provisions of the Philippine Distribution Code that requires mandatory compliance. 1.6.6 Singularity and Plurality. In interpreting any provisions of the Philippine Distribution Code, and unless otherwise specified, the singular shall include the plural, and vice versa. 1.6.7 Gender. Any reference to a gender shall include all other genders. Any reference to a person or entity shall include an individual, partnership, company, corporation, association, organization, institution, and other similar groups. 1.6.8 Include and including. The use of the word include or including to cite an enumeration shall not impose any restriction on the generality of the preceding words. 1.6.9 Written and in writing. The words written and in writing refer to the hard copy of a document that is generally produced by typing, printing, or other methods of reproducing words in a legible format. 1.6.10 Repealing clause. All existing rules and regulations, orders, resolutions, and other similar issuances or parts thereof, which are inconsistent with the provisions of the Philippine Distribution Code 2017 edition and its appendices, are hereby repealed or modified accordingly. 1.7 Definitions. In the Philippine Distribution Code, the following words and phrases shall, unless more particularly defined in an article, section, or subsection of the Philippine Distribution Code, have the following meanings. Accountable person. A person who has been duly authorized by the distribution utility or user to sign the fixed asset boundary documents on behalf of the distribution utility or user. Act Number 9136, also known as the Electric Power Industry Reform Act of 2001, which mandated the restructuring of the electricity industry, the privatization of the National Power Corporation, and the institution of reforms, including the promulgation of the Philippine Grid Code and the Philippine Distribution Code. Active energy. The integral of the active power with respect to time, measured in watt-hour or Wh, or multiples thereof. Unless otherwise qualified, the term energy refers to active energy. Active power. The time average of the instantaneous power over one period of the electrical wave measured in watts or W or multiples thereof. For AC circuits or systems, it is the product of the root mean square, or RMS, or effective value of the voltage and the RMS value of the in-phase component of the current. In a three-phase system, it is the sum of the active power of the individual phases. Adverse weather, a weather condition that results in abnormally high rate of forced outages for exposed components while such condition persists but does not qualify as a major storm disaster. An adverse weather condition can be defined for a particular system by selecting the proper values and conditions of the weather conditions reported by the weather bureau, including thunderstorm, wind velocity, precipitation, and temperature. Alert warning. Alert warning. A notice issued by the system operator, including yellow alert, blue alert, and red alert, to notify the user of the grid that an alert state exists. Amended connection agreement. An agreement between a user and the distribution utility which specifies the terms and conditions pertaining to the renovation or modification of the user system or equipment at an existing connection point in the distribution system. Ancillary service. Support services such as primary reserve, secondary reserve, tertiary reserve, reactive power support, and black start capability, which are necessary to support the transmission capacity and energy that are essential in maintaining power quality and the reliability of the grid, or as defined in the latest edition of the Philippine Grid Code. Apparent power, the product of the root mean square, RMS, or effective value of the current, and the root mean square value of the voltage. For AC circuits or systems, it is the square root of the sum of the squares of the active power and reactive power measured in volt-ampere or VA or multiples thereof. Automatic generation control, AGC. It is an equipment that automatically adjusts the generation to maintain its generation dispatch, interchange schedule plus its share of frequency regulation. AGC is a combination of secondary control for a control area or control block and real-time operation of the general dispatch function based on generation scheduling. Secondary control is operated by the system operator while generation scheduling is operated by respective generation companies. Automatic load drafting, ALD. The process of automatically and deliberately removing pre-selected loads from a power system in response to an abnormal condition in order to maintain the integrity of the system. It can be classified as 1. Under frequency load shedding, UFLS, and 2. Under voltage loading shedding, or UVLS. Backup protection. A form of protection that operates independently of the specified components in the primary protection system. It may duplicate the primary protection or may be intended to operate only if the primary protection fails or is temporarily out of service. Black start. The process of recovery from total system blackout using a generating unit with the capability to start and synchronize with the system without an external power supply. Central dispatch. The process of scheduling generation facilities and issuing dispatch instructions to industry participants considering the energy demand, operation reserve requirements, security constraints, outrages, and other contingency plans to achieve an economic operation while maintaining power quality, stability, and the reliability and security of the grid. Circuit breaker, a mechanical switching device which is capable of making, carrying, and breaking current under normal circuit conditions, and also capable of making, carrying for a specified time and breaking current under specified abnormal circuit conditions, such as a short circuit. Committed project planning data. The data pertaining to a user development wants the offer for a connection agreement or an amended connection agreement is accepted. Completion date. The date specified in the connection agreement or amended connection agreement. When the user development is scheduled to be completed and be ready for connection to the distribution system. Component. A piece of equipment, a line or circuit, a section of line or circuit, or a group of items, which is viewed as an entity for a specific purpose. Connected project planning data. The data which replaces the estimated values that were assumed for planning purposes, which validated actual values and updated estimates for the future and by updated forecast in the case of forecast data. Connection agreement. An agreement between a user and the distribution utility which specifies the terms and conditions pertaining to the connection of the user system or equipment to a new connection point in the distribution system. Connection point. The point of connection of the user system or equipment to the distribution system for users of the distribution system or to the grid for users of the grid. Connection point drawings. The drawings prepared for each connection point which indicate the equipment layout, common protection and control, and auxiliaries at the connection point. Control center. A facility used for monitoring and controlling the operation of the grid, distribution system, or a user system. Conventional generating facility. Any generating unit or plant which is not a variable renewable energy generating facility. Conventional generation company refers to generation company that is authorized by the ERC to operate a facility used in the generation of electricity which is not a variable renewable energy generating facility. Current transformer. An instrument transformer intended to have its primary winding connected in series that with the conductor carrying the current to be measured or controlled. Customer. Any person or entity supplied with electric service under a contract with a distribution utility or supplier. Customer average interruption duration index (CAIDI) represents the average time required to restore service. Customer demand management. The reduction in the supply of electricity to a consumer of electricity or disconnection of a customer in a manner agreed upon for commercial purposes between a customer and its generation company, distribution utility, or supplier. Customer rating approach. The process of evaluating a distribution utilities or suppliers customer service program by using a statistically valid transaction survey.
Today, I am Gracy Casio, and I am going to discuss the continuation of our report. So after the customer rating approach, we have customer self-generating plant. A customer with one or more generating units not subject to central dispatch. Another is customer services, the day-to-day transactions between a distribution utility and its customers, including payment of bills, application for connection, and customer complaints. We also have your customer service program, the totality of the customer services offered by a distribution utility. Customer service standards, a listing of customer services that measure how effectively a distribution utility conducts its day-to-day transactions with its customers. Declared data, the data provided by the generation company in accordance with the latest or current generating unit parameters. Dedicated feeder, a feeder utilized by a single user, either a customer or an embedded generation company. We also have here degradation of the distribution system, a condition resulting from a user development or a distribution system expansion project that has a material effect on the distribution system. We also have here demand, the average value of power or a related quantity over a specified interval of time. Demand control, a reduction in demand for the control of the frequency when the grid is in the emergency state. Demand control, imminent warning, a warning from the system operator not preceded by any other warning, which is issued when a reduction in demand is expected within the next 30 minutes. We also have demand forecast, an estimate of the future system peak demand expressed in kilowatts or megawatts of a particular connection point in the distribution system. Department of Energy or DOE, the government agency created pursuant to Republic Act of 7638, which is provided with an additional mandate under the Act of supervising the restructuring of the electricity industry, developing policies and procedures, formulating and implementing programs, and promoting a system of incentives that will encourage private sector investments and reforms in the electricity industry and ensuring an adequate and reliable supply of electricity. We also have detailed planning data and additional data which the distribution utility requires for the conduct of a more accurate distribution system planning study. Disconnection, the opening of an electrical circuit to isolate an electrical system or equipment from a power source. Dispatch, the process of apportioning the total demand of the grid through the issuance of dispatch instructions to the scheduled generating units and the generating units providing ancillary services in order to achieve the operational requirements of balancing demand with generation that will ensure the security of the grid. Now we have dispatch instruction. Dispatch instruction refers to the instruction issued by the system operator to the generation companies with scheduled generating units and the generation companies whose generating units will provide ancillary services to implement the final dispatch schedule in real time. Dispatch schedule, the target loading levels in megawatts for each scheduled generating unit or schedule loads for each reserve facility for end of the trading interval determined by the market operator through the use of a market dispatch optimization model. Dispatch scheduling and dispatch parameters. This refers to the technical data pertaining to the scheduled generating units which are taken into account in the preparation of the dispatch schedule. Distribution Development Plan or DDP, the expansion, reinforcement, and rehabilitation program of the distribution system. Distribution Impact Studies, a set of technical studies which are used to assess the possible effects of a proposed expansion, reinforcement, or modification of a distribution system. Distribution of electricity, the conveyance of electric power by a distribution utility through its distribution system. Distribution system, the system of wires, associated facilities belonging to a franchise distribution utility, extending between the delivery points and the transmission, sub-transmission system, or generating plant connection and the point of connection to the premises of the end users. Distribution utility refers to any electric cooperative, private corporation, government-owned utility, or existing local government unit which has an exclusive franchise to operate a distribution system in accordance with its franchise and act. Economic zone or the EZ. These are selected areas which are being developed into agro-industrial, tourist, recreational, commercial, banking, investment, and financial centers. An EZ may refer but not limited to any of the following: industrial states, export processing zones, free trade zones, information technology parks, and tourist or recreational centers. Electric cooperative, A cooperative or corporation authorized to provide electric services pursuant to the Presidential Decree Number 269. Electrical diagram, a schematic representation using standard electrical symbols which shows the connection of equipment or power system components to each other to external circuits. We have your embedded generating plant, the same meaning as embedded generators. Embedded generating unit, a generating unit within an embedded generating plant. Embedded generation company, a person or entity that generates electricity using an embedded generating unit. Embedded generator refers to generating units that are indirectly connected to the grid through the distribution utilities lines or industrial generation facilities that are synchronized with the grid. Emergency state, the grid operating condition when either a single outage contingency or a multiple outage contingency has occurred without resulting in total system blackout, but there is generation deficiency or operating margin is zero. Grid transmission voltage is outside the limits of plus minus 10% of the normal value, or the loading level of transmission line or substation equipment is above 115% of its operational thermal limit capacity exists, or as defined in the latest edition of the Philippine Grid Code. End user, any person or entity requiring the supply and delivery of electricity for its own use. Energy, amount of work that the system is capable of doing. Generally, it refers to electrical energy and is measured in kilowatt hours. Energy forecast, an estimate of the future system energy requirement expressed in kilowatt hours or megawatt hours related to each connection point in the distribution system. Energy Regulatory Commission, or the ERC, the independent quasi-judicial regulatory body created pursuant to Republic Act Number 9136, which is mandated to promote competition, encourage market development, ensure customer choice, and penalize abuse of market power in the restructured electricity industry, and among other functions, promulgate and enforce the Philippine Grid Code and the Philippine Distribution Code. EPC contractor, a company contracted by the generation company to carry out the engineering, procurement, and construction, or EPC, works of a conventional or VRE generating facility. Equipment, all apparatus, machines, conductors, etc. used as part of or in connection with an electrical installation. Equipment identification, the system of numbering or nomenclature for the identification of equipment at the connection points in the distribution system. Event, this means an unscheduled or unplanned occurrence of an abrupt change or disturbance in the power system due to fault, equipment outage, adverse weather condition, or natural phenomenon. Fast start, the capability of a generating unit or generating plant to start and synchronize with the grid within 15 minutes. Fault clearance time, the time interval from fault inception until the end of arc extinction by the circuit breaker. Fault level, the expected current expressed in kiloampere or in megavolt ampere that will flow in a short circuit at a specified point on the grid distribution system or any user system. Fixed asset boundary document, a document containing information and which defines the ownership and/or operational responsibilities for the equipment at the connection point. We also have here a flicker. This means the impression of unsteadiness of visual sensation induced by a light stimulus whose luminance or spectral distribution fluctuates with time. Forced outage, an outage that results from emergency conditions directly associated with a component requiring that it will be taken out of service immediately. Franchise area, a geographical area assigned or granted to a distribution utility for the distribution of electricity. Frequency, the number of complete cycles of a sinusoidal variation per unit time, usually measured in cycle per second or hertz. Frequency variation, the deviation of the fundamental system frequency from its nominal value. Generating plant, meaning a facility consisting of one or more generating units where electric energy is produced from some other energy by means of a suitable apparatus. Generating unit, a conversion apparatus including auxiliaries and associated equipment functioning as a single unit which is used to produce electric energy from some other form of energy. Generation company, a person or entity authorized by the ERC to operate a facility used in the generation of electricity. Generation electricity, the production of electricity by a generation company. Governor control, it refers to the unblocked turbine speed governor control of a generating unit. Grid, the high voltage backbone system of interconnected transmission lines, substations, and related facilities located in each of the zone, Visayas, and Mindanao. Grounding, a conducting connection by which an electrical circuit or equipment is connected to earth or to some conducting body of relatively large extent that serve as ground. Guaranteed standards refer to the customer services that will penalize a distribution utility for failure to provide the required level of service by making payment to affected customers. Harmonics, sinusoidal voltages and currents having frequencies that are integral multiples of the fundamental frequency. High voltage or HV, a voltage level exceeding 34.5 kilovolts up to 230 kilovolts. IEC standard, the international standard for electrotechnical equipment approved and published by the International Electrotechnical Commission. Implementing safety coordinator, the safety coordinator assigned by the distribution utility to establish the requested safety precautions in the user system. Installed capacity, expressed in megawatts or kilowatts, it refers to the sum of rated generating capacity of each generating unit. Interruption, the loss of service to a customer or a group of customers or other facilities. An interruption is the result of one or more component outages. Island grid, a generating plant or group of generating plants and its associated load, which is isolated from the rest of the grid, but is capable of generating and maintaining a stable supply of electricity to the customers within the isolated area. We have here isolation, the electrical separation of a part of or component from the rest of electrical system to ensure safety when the part or component is to be maintained or when electric service is not required. Large customer, a customer with a demand of latest 1 megawatts or the threshold value specified by the ERC. Large embedded generation company, a generation company whose generating facility at a connection point has an aggregate installed capacity of 10 megawatts or more. Load, an entity or an electrical equipment that consumes or draws electrical energy. Local safety instructions, a set of instructions regarding the safety precautions on megavolts or high volts equipment to ensure the safety of personnel carrying out work or testing the distribution system or the user system. Long duration voltage variation, a variation of the RMS value of the voltage from nominal voltage for a time greater than 1 minute. Long-term flicker severity, a value derived from 12 successive measurements of short-term flicker severity over a 2-hour period. Loss of mains, a situation in which, due to an incident and/or abnormal situation, a portion of the distribution network to which the embedded generating plant is connected separates from the main distribution system, forming an island. We also have low voltage, a voltage level not exceeding 1000 volts. Maintenance program, a set of schedules which are coordinated by the distribution utility and a system operator, specifying planned maintenance for equipment in the distribution system or in any user system. Manufacturer, a person or organization that manufactures embedded generating units and also packages components manufactured by others to make a generating plant. Major event, designates an event that exceeds reasonable design or operational limits of the electric power system. Major event day, or the MED, a day in which the daily SAIDI exceeds a threshold value. For the purpose of calculating daily system SAIDI, an interruption that spans multiple calendar days is accrued to the day on which the interruption began. Statistically, days having a daily system SAIDI greater than 3 times are days expected. Activities that occur on major event days should be separately analyzed and reported. Major storm disaster, a weather condition wherein the design limits of equipment or components are exceeded and which results in extensive mechanical fatigue to equipment, widespread customer interruption, and unusually long service restoration time. Manual load dropping, or the MLD, the process of manually and deliberately removing pre-selected loads from a power system in response to an abnormal condition and in order to maintain the integrity of the system. We have here market operator. This means the entity responsible for the operation of the wholesale electricity spot market in accordance with the WESM rules. Material effect, a condition that has resulted or expected to result in problems involving any of the following: power quality, system reliability, system loss, and safety. Medium voltage, or MV, a voltage level exceeding 1 kV up to 34.5 kV. Meter, a device which measures and records the consumption or production of electricity. Metering data, the measurement data obtained from metering facilities for purposes of commercial settlements, operational monitoring, and planning. Metering equipment, the apparatus necessary for measuring electrical active and reactive power and energy inclusive of a multifunction meter and the necessary instrument potential, current and phase shifting transformers, and all wiring communication devices provided. Metering point, a location where the metering equipment is installed. Metering service provider, a person or entity authorized by the ERC to provide metering services. Minimum load, the minimum registered load in a given period or particular type of generation. Minimum stable loading, or the PMAIN, the minimum net output in megawatts that a generating unit can continuously and reliably sustain based on the generating unit capability test. Momentary interruption, a single operation of an interrupting device that results in a voltage zero. Multiple outage contingency, an event caused by the failure of 2 or more components of the grid. National Electrification Administration, or the NEA, means the government agency created under Presidential Decree No. 269, whose additional mandate includes preparing electric cooperatives in operating and competing under a deregulated electricity market, strengthening their technical capability, and enhancing their financial viability as electric utilities through improved regulatory policies. National Power Corporation, or the NPC, the government corporation created under Republic Act 6395 as amended, whose generation assets, real estate, and other disposable assets, except for the assets of SPUG and for IPP contracts, shall be privatized, and whose transmission assets shall be transferred to the Power Sector Assets and Liabilities Management Corporation, or the SAM. Net declared capacity, meaning the capacity of a generating unit or generating plant less the watts consumed by the generating unit or generating plant as declared by the generation company. We also have here net metering, a system appropriate for distributed generation in which a distribution grid user has a two-way connection to the grid and is only charged or credited as the case may be the difference between its import energy and export energy. Non-technical loss, the component of system loss that is not related to the physical characteristics and functions of the electrical system and is caused primarily by human action, whether intentional or not. Normal state, the grid operating condition when the system frequency, voltage, and transmission line and equipment loading are within their normal operating limits. Operating margin, the available generating capacity in excess of the sum of system demand plus losses with a specified period of time. Operational thermal limit capacity. This means the maximum capacity of transmission facilities determined and declared by the system operator and transmission network provider, which is submitted to GMC for validation annually. Outage. Outage means the state of a component when it is not available to perform its intended function due to some event directly associated with that component. Overall standards refer to the customer services where it is not appropriate to give individual guarantees but where customers have a right to expect the distribution utility to deliver a predetermined reasonable level of performance. And we also have overvoltage, a long duration voltage variation where the RMS value of the voltage is greater than or equal to 110% of the nominal voltage. Partial system blackout, the condition when the part of the grid is isolated from the rest of the grid and all generation in that part of the grid has shut down. Philippine Distribution Code or the PDC. This is the set of rules, requirements, procedures, and standards governing distribution utilities and users in the operation, maintenance, and development of the distribution system. It also defines and establishes the relationship of the distribution systems with the facilities or installations of the parties connected thereto. Philippine Electrical Code or the PEC, the electrical safety code that establishes basic materials quality and electrical work standards for the safe use of electricity for light, heat, power, and communications, signaling, and for other purposes. Philippine Grid Code, the set of rules, requirements, procedures, and standards to ensure the safe, reliable, and secured and efficient operation, maintenance, and development of the grid and its related facilities. Philippine Energy Plan or PEP. This is the overall energy program formulated and updated yearly by the DOE and submitted to the Congress pursuant to RA 7638. Photovoltaic or PV, a method of generating electrical energy by converting solar radiation into direct current electricity using semiconductors that directly produce electricity when exposed to light. And lastly, we have the photovoltaic generation system or the PVS, a power system which is made up of one or more solar panels, a controller or inverter, and the interconnections and mounting for other components which is connected to the system at a single connection point. So that's all for my report.
Plan Activity Notice. A notice issued by a user to the distribution utility for any planned activities such as a planned shutdown or scheduled maintenance of its equipment at least 3 days prior to actual shutdown or maintenance. Point of grounding. The point on the distribution system or the user system at which grounding can be established for safety purposes. Point of isolation. The isolation and distribution system or the user system at which isolation can be established for safety purposes. Power Development Program or PDP, the indicative plan for managing demand through energy efficient programs and for the upgrading, expansion, rehabilitation, repair, and maintenance of power generation and transmission facilities formulated and updated yearly by the DOA in coordination with generation companies, the transmission network providers, system operator, and distribution utilities. Power factor, the ratio of active power to apparent power. Power quality, the quality of the voltage including its frequency and resulting current that is measured in the grid distribution system or any user system during normal conditions. Preliminary project planning data, the data relating to a proposed user development at the time the user applies for a connection agreement or an amended connection agreement. Next is prescriptive approach, the process of evaluating distribution utilities or suppliers customer service program by comparing its actual performance with the targets approved by the ERC. Next is primary response, the autonomous response of a generating unit to frequency changes typically provided by the action. Generating of the system speed governor or synchronous generating unit. Next is primary reserve synchronous generating the capacity that is allocated to stabilize the system frequency and to cover the loss or failure of synchronized generating unit or a transmission line or the power import from a single circuit interconnection. Next is rated capacity, the continuous load carrying ability of transmission, distribution, or other electrical equipment expressed in either megavolt amperes MVA or megavolt amperes reactive MVAR or megawatts MW. Next is reactive energy, the integral of the reactive power with respect to time measured in the VERH or multiples thereof. Next is reactive power, the component of electrical power representing the alternative exchange of stored energy between sources and loads or between two systems measured in VER or multiples thereof. For AC circuit or system, it is the product of the RMS voltage and the RMS value of the quadrature component of alternating current. In three-phase system, it is the sum of the reactive power of the individual phases. Next is reactive power capability curve, a diagram which shows the reactive power capability limit versus the real power within which a generating unit is expected to operate under normal condition. Next is red alert. An alert notice is issued by the system operator when the primary reserve is zero, a generation deficiency exists, or there is critical loading or imminent overloading of transmission line or equipment. Next is reliability, the probability that a system or component will perform a required task or mission for a specified time in a specified environment. It is ability of the power system to continue to provide service to its customer. Next is requesting safety coordinator. The safety coordinator assigned by the distribution utility with it requests the safety precaution be established in the user system. Next is safety coordinator, a person designated authorized by the distribution utility to be responsible for the coordination of safety precaution at the connection point when work or testing is to be carried out on a system which requires the provision of safety precaution for MB or HB equipment. Next is safety log, a chronological record or messages relating to system coordinating sent and received by each safety coordinator. Safety precaution refers to the isolation and grounding of MV or HV equipment when the work or testing is to be done on distribution system or user system. Safety rules, the rules that seek to safeguard personnel working on the distribution system from the hazard arising from the equipment or the distribution system. Next is safety tag, a label conveying a warning against possible interference or intervention as defined in the safety clearance and tagging procedures. Scheduled generating plant, a generating plant whose generating units are subject to central dispatch by the system operator. Scheduled generating unit, a generating unit within a scheduled generating plant. Scheduled maintenance, the outage of a component or equipment due to maintenance, which is coordinated by distribution utility or user, as the case may be. Secondary response, the centralized automatic response through automatic generation control of a qualified generating unit to raise or lower signal automatically through SCADA of the system operator with the aim of maintaining the frequency at a pre-established value and or returning the frequency to normal values. Secondary reserve, synchronized generating capacity that is allocated to restore the system frequency from the quasi-steady state value as established by the primary response of generating units to the nominal frequency of 60 Hz security. The continuous operating of a power system is in the normal state ensuring safe and adequate supply of power to end user even when some parts or components of the system are on outage. Then short duration voltage variation, a variation of the RMS value of the voltage from its nominal value for a time greater than one half cycle of the power frequency but not exceeding 1 minute. Short-term flicker severity, a measure of the visual severity or flicker derived from a time series output of a flicker meter over a 10-minute period. Then shutdown, the condition of the equipment when it is de-energized or disconnect from the system. Then significance and incident, an event or distribution system or the system or any user that has a serious or widespread effects on the distribution system and or the system of the user. Significant incident notice, a notice issued by the distribution utility or any user if a significant incident has transpired on the distribution system or the system of the user as the case may be. Next is the site, refers to the substation or switchyard in the grid, distribution system or the user system where the connection point is situated. Next is Small Power Utilities Group (SPUG), the function unit of NPC created to pursue the missionary electrification function. Then Spot Market has the same meaning as the wholesale electricity spot market. Then stability, the ability of the dynamic components of the power system to return to a normal or stable operating point after being subjected to some form of change or disturbance. Next is standard planning data, the general data required by the distribution utility as part of the application for a connection agreement or amended connection agreement. Then start up, the process of bringing a generating unit from shutdown to synchronous speed. Then supplier, any person or entity authorized by the ERC to sell, broker, market, or aggregate electricity to end user. Then supply of electricity, the sale of electricity by a party other than a generation company or a distribution utility in the franchise area of a distribution utility using the wires of the distribution utility concerned. Then sustained interruption, any interruption not classified as a part of a momentary event, that is, any interruption that lasts more than 5 minutes. Next is synchronize, the state when connected generating units and or interconnected AC system operate at the same frequency and where the phase angle displacement between their voltage vary about a stable operating point. Next is system, refers to the grid or distribution system or any user system, also a group of components connected or associated in a fixed configuration to perform a specified function. Then, system average interruption duration index indicates the total duration of interruption for the average consumer during a predefined period of time. It is commonly measured in consumer minutes or consumer hours of interruption. Next is System Average Interruption Frequency Index, indicates how often average customers experiences a sustained interruption over a predefined period of time. Then system loss. In a distribution system, it is the difference between the electric energy delivered to the distribution system and the energy delivered to the end user and other entities connected to the system. System operator, the party responsible for generation, dispatch, the provision of auxiliary services and operation control to ensure safety, power quality, stability, reliability, and the secure of the grid. Next is system test, the set of tests which involves simulating condition or the controlled application of unusual or extreme condition that may have an impact on the distribution system or the user system. Next is system test, coordinator, a person who is appointed as the chairman of the system test group. Next is system test group, a group established for the purpose of coordinating the system tests that will be carried out on the distribution system or the user system. Next is system test procedure, a procedure that specifies the switching sequence and proposed timing of the switching sequence, including other activities deemed necessary and appropriate by the system test group in carrying out the system test. Next is system test proponent, refers to the distribution utility or the user who plans to undertake a system test and who submits a system test request to the distribution utility if it is not system test proponent. Next is system test program, a program prepared by the system test group which contains the plan for carrying out the system test procedure including the manner in which the system test is to be monitored, the allocation of the cost among the affected parties, and other matters that the system test group has deemed appropriate and necessary. Next is system test report, a report prepared by the test proponent at the conclusion of a system test for substitution to the distribution utility, affected user, and the members of the system test group. Next is system test request, a notice submitted by the system test proponent to the distribution utility indicating the purpose, nature, and procedure for carrying out the proposed system test. Next is technical loss, the component of the system loss that is inherent in the physical delivery of electric energy. It includes conductor loss, transformer core loss, and technical error in meters. Next is test and commissioning, putting into service a system or equipment that has passed all required tests to show that the system or equipment was erected and connected in the proper manner and it can be expected to work satisfactory. Then next is total demand distortion, the total root sum square harmonic current distortion in percent of the maximum demand load current 15 or 30 minutes demand. Then total harmonic distortion, the ratio of the root mean square value, the sum of the square individual harmonic amplitude to the RMS value of the fundamental frequency of a complex waveform. Next is total system, refers to the grid and all user system connected to it. Total system blackout, the condition when all generation in the grid has ceased, the entire system has shut down, and the system operator must implement a black start to restore the grid to its normal state. The next is transformer, an electrical device or equipment that converts voltage and current from one level to another. Then transaction survey, a statistically valid sample survey of customers who have had recent interaction, including regular payment of bills with the distribution utility. Then transient voltage, high frequency over voltage causing by lightning switching of capacitor banks or cables, current chopping, arcing ground faults, ferroresonance, and other related phenomena. Then next is transmission network provider, the party that is responsible for maintaining adequate grid capacity in accordance with the provision of the Philippine Grid Code. The next is type tested, a generating plant design which has been tested by the manufacturer, component manufacturer, or supplier, or a third party to ensure the design meets the requirements of the Philippines Distribution Code, and for which the manufacturer has declared that all products supplied will be constructed to the same standard and with the same protection setting as the tested product. Under frequency relay UFR, an electrical relay that operates when the system frequency decreases to a preset value. Next is under voltage, a long duration voltage variation where the RMS value of the voltage is less than or equal to 90% of the nominal voltage. Next is user, a person or entity that uses the distribution system and related distribution facilities. User also refers to a person or entity to which the Philippine Distribution Code applies. Next is user development, the system or equipment to be connected to the distribution system or to be modified, including the relevant proposed new connection and or modifications within the user system that requires a connection agreement or an amended connecting agreement. Next is user system, refers to a system owned or operated by a user of the distribution system. Next is variable renewable energy, VRE, generation company, refers to an embedded generation company that is authorized by the ERC to operate a variable renewable energy generating facility. Next is variable renewable energy, VRE, generating facility, a facility consisting of one or more generating units where electric energy is produced from a source that is renewable, cannot be stored by the facility owner or operator, and has inherent intermittency that is beyond the control of the facility owner or operator. Next is variable renewable energy, VRE, installed capacity, the sum of rated generating capacity of which wind turbine generating unit in a wind farm, or the sum of rated generating capacity of each solar panel in a photovoltaic generation system expressed in MV or QV. Next is voltage, the electromotive force or electric potential difference which causes the flow of electric current in an electric circuit between 2 points, which causes the flow of electric current in an electric circuit. Next is voltage control, the strategy used by the distribution utility or user to maintain the voltage of the distribution system or the user system within the limits prescribed by the Philippine Distribution Code. Next is voltage sag, a short duration voltage variation there, where the RMS value of the voltage decreases between 10% and 90% of the nominal value. Voltage sag is also known as voltage dip. Next is voltage well, a short duration voltage variation where the RMS value of the voltage decreases to between 110% and 180% of the nominal value. Next is voltage transformer, a device that scales down primary voltage supply to a meter while providing electrical isolation. Next is voltage unbalance, the maximum deviation from the average of the three-phase voltage divided by the average of the three-phase voltages expressed in percent voltage variation, the deviation of the root mean square RMS value of the voltage from its nominal value expressed in percent. Next is voluntary demand management. The demand disconnection initiated by the user's customer demand management and voluntary load curtailment. Next is voluntary load curtailment, the agreed self-reduction of demand by identified industrial and commercial end user to assist in frequency control when generation deficiency exists. This is also known as interruptible load program or ILP. Next is wheeling charge. Refers to the tariff paid for the conveyance of electric power and energy through the grid or distribution system. Next is Wholesale Electricity Spot Market or WESM. The electricity market established by the DOA pursuant to Section 30 of the Act. The next is wind farm, a collection of wind turbine generating units that are connected to the grid at a single connection point. The next is the wind turbine generating unit, a generating unit that uses wind as primary resource. Current, AGC automatic generation control, ALD automatic load dropping, CAIDI customer average, interruption duration index, CCPD coupling capacitor potential devices, DDP distribution development plan, DMC distribution management committee, DOA Department of Energy, EBIT earnings before interest and taxes, EPC engineering procurement and construction, ERC Energy Regulatory Commission, FGM Free Governor Mode, GW Gigawatt, GWH Gigawatt Hour, HV High Voltage, IEC International Electrotechnical Commission, IRR Implementing Rules and Regulation, KA is kiloampere, KAVA kilovar hour, KW is kilowatt, KWH is kilowatt hour, LV is low voltage, MAIFI is momentary average interruption frequency index, MED is major event pain, and MLV is manual load dropping, MSP metering service provider, MV is medium voltage, MVA is megavolt ampere, MVAR is megavolt ampere active, MVARH is megavar hour, MW is megawatt, MWH is megawatt hour, NEA is National Electrification Administration, PDP is Power Development Program, PEC is Philippine Electrical Code, PAP is Philippine Energy Plan, PV is Photovoltaic, PVC is Photovoltaic Generation System, RMS is Root Mean Square, ROA is Return on Asset, ROCOF is Rate of Change of Frequency, RTU is Remote Technical Unit, SAID is System Average Interruption Duration Index, SAIFI System Average Interruption Frequency Index, SCADA is Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition, SPOG is Small Power Utility Group, TDD is Total Demand Distortion, THD is Total Harmonic Distortion, TNP is Transmission Network Provider, UFLS is Under Frequency Load Shedding, UFR is Under Frequency Relay, UVLS is Under Voltage Load Shedding, V is Volt, VA is Volt Ampere, VAR is Volt Ampere Active, VRA is Variable Renewable Energy, and W is Watt. WESM is wholesale electricity spot market. WH is watt hour. X/R is reactance or resistance. That's all. Thank you.